And so there's an aspect of this where what you're consenting to is that you're entering into a process that carries a certain level of unknowns to it. So we have some other videos where we'll talk in more depth about consent, consent around touch, consent around the process. And I think it's very important, whoever you're working with, to gain a very clear understanding of their process around consent with you. And specifically informed consent, meaning what have you been properly informed of so that you can consent with an understanding of what you're consenting to. But this brings up an interesting question in the psychedelic space, is how can you consent to an experience that has such a high level of unknowns to it? When you sign up for a retreat, you are on a macro level consenting to an experience that carries a great deal of unknowns. 5-MeO, DMT in particular, I always say that, but I'd say this, I guess, about all psychedelics. You never know exactly what you're going to get in the experience. And sometimes you think it's going to be really challenging and it ends up being exceptionally beautiful. And sometimes you think it's going to be really beautiful and it ends up being really challenging. And sometimes you think it's going to be challenging and it's actually just far beyond anything you could have imagined. Especially if it's your first time working with a medicine, you really don't have any way of knowing exactly what's going to come about and how it's going to feel. And sometimes things come up in the experience that you weren't even aware of. Perhaps a past memory, some feeling you have about something going on in your life or that has happened in your life, or sometimes we unearth things that we didn't even know are there. So in some ways you are consenting to something that is very much an unknown. And you're also consenting to a process that begins during the ceremony and through the process of preparation, but it carries on long after you leave. It's important to understand that ultimately we can support you in any way we can, and whoever your facilitator is, you should ask them very clearly about what they offer in terms of integration support. Perhaps it's finding a therapist or finding another coach or finding some workshops to go to or in integration circles. There's all sorts of ways that you can support yourself, and you really should. But at the end of the day, you have to take responsibility for the process that you're entering into. No one can help you if you're not ready to take responsibility for your own process. So ultimately, at a macro level, what you're consenting to is taking responsibility for your own healing. And that doesn't mean that if someone says that they will support you in a certain way, that you shouldn't hold them accountable to that. But ultimately, it is up to you to work through this process. No one else can do it for you. So it's just important to understand that that's what you're entering into when you consider psychedelics.